Alright guys, today I want to take you through my dynamic leg warm-up. This warm-up is great if you're doing a leg day in the gym or if you're just warming up for a bodyweight workout. You can also use this warm-up just as a daily routine for your lower body to make sure everything's moving right, especially during this time of quarantine. You do not want to adopt a 90% sedentary lifestyle. That is going to wreak havoc on your posture, frankly every level of your health and energy. So in this warm-up I am going to essentially take you from top to bottom, bottom to top, and I'm warming up the entire lower body. So for me to begin, I always like starting with the calves. That always simply tends to be tight for me, and it makes a lot of sense to start at the bottom up. If you have tight calves, tight legs, then it's going to really inhibit your ability to squat, deadlift, and get the full leverage and mobility out of your legs. Your calves are taken care of. I would actually recommend massaging your feet. This is maybe not what you might think of as your typical dynamic warm-up, but let me tell you, your feet are one of the most dynamic aspects of your body. So the way that your feet absorb force when it impacts the ground is really, really important, and not just when you're landing, but also when you're pressing off of your feet for squats, deadlifts, and all of those type of pressing exercises off the floor. So what I like to do is grab a foam roller. You can grab a tennis ball, you can grab really whatever you have available. You can freeze a water bottle and you can get a little bit of icing action as well while you create that. And really what we're doing right now is just trying to create some pressure on the arch of the foot. Right, create some depth, massage the bottom so that all parts are activated. You're not just pushing through your heels, you're not just pushing through your toes, you're pushing through the whole bottom of your foot. Alright, next we're going to warm up the knees and the ankles essentially, as well as the hips. And the way we're going to do that is a dynamic hip flexor stretch. So it's somewhat like a lunge, but we're moving a little bit forward because we don't want this knee to come past this foot right here, right? And what makes this dynamic is you can go back and forth, and then you can stretch your hamstring. Make sure you maintain a tall, straight back, and then you can press forward. And now you're stretching your glutes, your hip flexors, your abs, and you can even place your arms on the floor and tilt upwards, twisting and involving your abdominals, activating that transverse plane. You know, the transition plane from your lower body and crossing from left to right. The next stretch we're going to go to is a little bit of a walking stretch. It's more dynamic. You might notice that we're getting a little bit more dynamic as we go, and it's essentially a walking army stretch. Many of you may have seen that before. But we're going to involve the core a little bit more by keeping our hands overhead and somewhat like a pendulum, right? So we have to stabilize and also bringing the opposite arm to the opposite leg as we go. So just like that. And walking it through. You may feel powerful shoots of kinetic energy running through your hamstrings as you do this. And that's because it's a very dynamic exercise. We're trying to bring up our leg as far as we can as we go, and think about also using your abdominals to crunch up and create a little bit more height as you go. And we're trying to keep our spine completely neutral throughout this movement. Alright, the next walking stretch that we're going to do is a little bit of a stretch for the hamstrings and quads, and then we're also going to be moving it into a single leg deadlift. So it looks something like this. We essentially bring our knee to our chest, walk it back, and then that side's done. And your knees should feel quite powerful after that, and like they can drive upward. The next thing that I would recommend, depending on your goals, depending on what you want out of fitness, you may want to train your nervous system and activate it a little bit more. If you're trying to generate power from your training, if you're trying to get quite explosive, that can be difficult to do with body weight, so the way you want to go about that and waking up your body is plyometrics. We're really trying to explode up here to wake up the body and the nervous system. This is a very good warm-up as well if you're in the gym, if you want to warm up for hand cleans, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, whatever it may be. The next dynamic leg exercise I was actually telling you to engage in would be a deep squat. Like this exercise, it's less dynamic, but more dynamic in the way that we usually squat, in that we're trying to get as much range of motion as possible. So I think there's two ways to look at dynamic exercises in warm-up context. We can look at it like we're moving throughout the movement, or as we're increasing range of motion more than normal. So here we're increasing range of motion more than normal. Usually you might stop here. We're trying to get all the way to the deep, deep squat during this movement. And it will make the harder squat variations a lot easier, so you can get the full depth out of them. The next exercise we're going to engage in is a stiff leg ape walk. In this exercise, we're essentially trying to bring our hands through our head and our feet past them, like so. You will feel a powerful contraction in your abs, and you'll feel them engage a lot during this exercise. It is great for essentially connecting all those kinetic chains and having everything work as a unit. It's also phenomenal for your squats and hip flexors as well. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot more of jump roping after this whole quarantine has happened, but it is a great way to challenge your stability, balance, coordination, stamina, endurance, all of those things all at once. So it is a very catch-all exercise to make it a little bit more dynamic, to make it a little bit more challenging, and to have it be a little bit more effective as far as time goes. What I like to do is do a single leg variation. If you find that you're having pain in your shins or knees, then you know that you're not impacting the force correctly. The next exercise that we're going to engage in is essentially lying on the ground, hip flexion. We're going to touch our toes, bring our upper body through. Think about bringing your belly button all the way to the floor. You get the idea. You should be able to bring your feet rather, over your head, kind of legs back like so. And then as you come back up, you want to rotate back and go back into the hamstring stretch that we were engaging in before. So it looks like this. Let's all put together. Another phenomenal exercise that you can do is inchworm walkouts in a standing position, essentially touching your toes, and then walk all the way out. Try to keep your heels on the ground as much as you can. Now I'll use your calves and stretch those out a little bit more, and then push through and push away from you as well. All the way back, sink back into your heels, keeping that stretch in your hamstrings, and your posterior chain should be strong the entire time. You can even do a downward dog in this position. Sorry, an upward dog or a cobra if you prefer. Push away. Again, we're trying to increase the depth and range of motion as we go. So we're trying to get deeper and deeper into that starting position each time that we inchworm back. The next exercise that we're going to be going through is the 3D lunge. In this exercise, we're going to be working, yes, on the lunge, but also activating and integrating the abdominals and the transverse plane when we're doing so. You can add a kettlebell to these hands or a dumbbell to make the exercise a little bit more challenging. Again, here though, we're focusing on range of motion. You may feel a powerful stretch to your shoulders, lats, abdominals, and hip flexors. The last leg mobility exercise that we're going to engage in and some dynamic warm-up is a single leg glute kickback and leg curl. This is meant to kind of finish off the legs, put everything into perspective, so we're hitting the glutes, the hamstrings, and the quads all in one movement to try to integrate them and have them be fluid throughout. I hope you enjoyed this dynamic leg warm-up. The legs are a very diverse body part, and they require a lot of attention when we're warming up if we want to progress, get stronger, and do things in a safe manner. Remember, this is more of a dynamic routine. There's a lot more stretching that you can do as far as correcting your posture, right? Everybody is different, so in this warm-up, I'm not able to go into your specific deviations. You might have tight hip flexors, you might have tight quads, you might have tight hamstrings, you might have tight feet. Whatever the case may be for you, I would invite you and encourage you to spend time there. This routine is kind of an integration, if you will, from the work that you do outside of it, so that you can put all the pieces together before you can work out, before you get ready for the day. And yes, I hope you enjoyed it a lot. Leave a comment like below if you enjoyed, if you learned something, and tell me if you want to see an upper body version of the same routine.